Hey scrappy people, Traci Reed here today, coming at you with TRD Sketchy Sunday, and you can see the sketch right here that I'm going to be working with, and I am going to demolish this sketch. Well, okay, I adhere to the sketch pretty closely, but I add so much to it to make this layout work for these photos that it just becomes its own beast of a layout, and I love it to death, but it was definitely a lot of work. This video is 12 minutes 35 seconds long, and it is severely chopped up to make it work for a YouTube video. So what I'm going to do is I have these two large photos, and I'm going to use them as flaps on either edge of my page, and they're going to close around the main composition of the page. I really wanted to highlight this large photo of us up in the air. And so the best way that I could find to do that was to create these page flaps using this cardstock hinge, which is a technique that I always do. I'm sandwiching it between the two pieces of paper that are adhered back to back, and then adhering it to the back of the page. So now that I've got those done, you can see that one side opens up into this Adventurers Out There page, which eliminates the need to continue my composition all the way across that large page, and the other side is going to be more background for my paper. So I'm going to start cutting out, or for my layout, I'm going to start cutting out circles for this page, and I'm trying to figure out how many I'm going to need specifically for this composition, how many across and how many tall. I decided to go with 3 tall, and we're going to have 6 all the way across. So that gives me 18 circles that I need to cut out. And I'm going to be using a variety of papers from the Anywhere But Here collection and its sister twin collection from Echo Park that I designed called Away We Go. They're the same collection in 2 different mediums, but because there is chipboard and puffy stickers and stuff like that, I like to use them together because it's the same collection but different textures. So this yellow paper specifically is from the Away We Go collection, but most of the papers that I punch out are going to be from the Anywhere But Here collection because I wanted to use the scraps of what I already had on my page. So I've cut out a few half circles, and a great way to do that is to either cut out a whole circle with your circle punch and then cut it in half, or just cut out a half circle with your circle punch. Either way is going to work. I have all of the circles that I've already cut, and I want to make sure that I'm working in a good pattern variation for this page, because a lot of this circular, or these circle pieces, are going to be covered up by photos. So I want to make sure that the ones that are not covered up, there's a good variation of color. You can see that I need some more of that dark blue for this page specifically because there's a lot of white based papers. And I'm going to, I didn't know what I was going to do to the outside edge. I didn't have quite enough paper to span the entire thing in one contiguous piece. So I didn't know what I was going to do to the outside edge of that flap. I decided in the end to just add more blue to it rather than add, I thought about adding like one of the Traveler's Notebook signatures that had the hot air balloons, but it was just a little bit too big. So I'm going to start putting down these circles on my page, trying to make sure that I space out the colors well, but I am going to be going back over each single one, or every single one of these, and putting a half circle of a different pattern on them too. So anytime that I feel like there's too much of one color in one place, I can always mitigate that by using these half circles. So I'm going to put down a couple, and then I'm going to make sure that my photos are where I want them to be. I only had a few pieces of this light pink paper, so I just put those down first to make sure that they were spread out across the page. And then I have a bunch of these yellow papers as well. The back has clouds. I decided that I could use that on a couple of the pages, or a couple of the circles, even though there was no blue circles, no blue cloud circles. I didn't want the blue clouds to be on top of the light blue paper. I thought that that would blend in too much, but if I put the light blue clouds on top of a bright circle, it worked out better. So you can see I used that in a few different places. I made sure to also vary the angle of the half circles so that they weren't all like horizontal or vertical, or they weren't all angled the same diagonally across the page. I want to use these suns and clouds that are on the die cuts, or in the die cuts that come with the Away We Go collection. I cut out 2 of the yellow suns and then a bunch of clouds, and I'm just sort of placing them around here to see where I want them to be before I make any real decisions. I've sped this up to 3x instead of 2x because this literally is going to take me forever to embellish everything, and so I'm going to make sure that it doesn't take a lifetime on this video too. So I printed out my journaling on strips, and I really want to use this Color Cast Designs Let's Go piece. You can see once I put it down that it is a little bit broken. So it's just, it happens sometimes with acrylic. I pick it up and it pulls apart completely here in a second. That's okay. I'm just going to use some liquid glue and I'll glue it back together, and when I glue it down onto the page, it won't be that big of a deal. So I've gone through and I've pulled out some of the Anywhere But Here stuff from the collection because I want to start with Anywhere But Here and then fill in with Away We Go. So I pulled out these stamps that I thought would work with some of these photos and some tags as well. If you remember on the sketch, the photos are all backed by tags and they have embellishment clusters, so that's kind of where I'm going right here. These frames and tags are now from the Away We Go collection, and I just want to add in a variety of different shapes and frames from the collections to make it a little bit more interesting. Obviously, the circles take up a lot of visual energy, and so I just want to make sure that the photos are standing out from the background enough that it doesn't look like the entirety of the composition is just these circles. So I'm going to start one cluster at a time. I'm working down here on the bottom first. Then I'll come back through after I have all of my clusters settled, and I will add in a little bit more here and there where I feel like it needs it. That's kind of the way that I always work all of my layouts, especially when I have a bunch of different photo or embellishment clusters, is I will sort of finalize each cluster to the extent to which it can be finalized before the page is done, and then I'll come back through and I'll add what I feel is missing to each cluster. So I really wanted to horizontally extend that one specifically, so I used a horizontal frame and a horizontal postage stamp to sort of span the entirety of that top corner. I really like that this is the Good Life. I'm going to offset it just a little bit so that you have that photo frame mark visible on the outside edge of that photo. And I want to extend this one vertically because there's no other photos on this center piece here, so I want to make sure that the main photo takes up a lot of vertical space on the page so that it doesn't look like it's just like this one tiny little random cluster just hanging out and then a bunch of circles. Like, the main goal of this is to make sure that there's no real circles that aren't touching something else. That's kind of what I'm going for here. So you can see all of my embellishments so far sort of overlap all of the circles except for that top right one in the middle. So that's kind of the vague notion that I'm working with as I go through this process. So I'm working on the last photo cluster now, and I know that I'm going to have that large Let's Go title, so I wanted to make sure that this cluster spans horizontal space rather than too much vertical space. I am going to have a little bit of vertical space, but I want it to go more horizontal than anything else. And then I'm going to have to reorganize the word bits down here, or the journal strips down here, because I want the G descender to sort of nest with the journaling rather than sit on top of it. That way there's no dead space between the journaling and that O. So that's my thought process that's my thought process behind reorganizing those journal strips. And then I'm just trying to make this center work. It goes in a very specific orientation to make sure that it like embeds perfectly. So there we go. Had to rework that, and then I can put this Let's Go back down. All right, so now we need clouds, and I found a cloud. I knew I was missing one. I'm kind of looking for it here. It was stuck to the back of my arm, so I ended up putting that down once the camera turns off and I realized that it's stuck to the back of my arm. Crafter problems, am I right? So now I filled up a lot of this space, but I still feel like there's a little bit of empty space. Like, I don't want it to be too cluttered because obviously there's a lot going on with the circles in the background, but I feel like, especially between the top of that "This is the Good Life" tag and that circle up there in the top corner, there's some space that needs to be bridged. So what I decided to do is put that "Enjoy This Journey" down, and then I'm going to use some chipboard from the Away We Go collection. And I'm just going to make a little banner here. And now that banner touches that tag, and I feel like they're combined together better than they were before. So I'm looking through all of like the puffy stickers now from that collection and the actual stickers, and I'm just rearranging things so that they work together. For some reason in my mind, the parachute plus the hot air balloons worked together stylistically, so I'm focusing on some hot air balloons as well. Getting close to done here though. I decide to finish it here, and then I'm like, no, I need something on the front of this, so I'm going to create a cluster with some chipboard and some of the embellishments. I decide to not use that rainbow one because there's a rainbow one right there. So instead I'm just going to use this single chipboard piece. And then I like the repetition of all of these curly arrows. I've used them in a couple places on the page, so I'm going to put one here as well. And I felt like I needed like one more thing, so I found that cloud and I put it on the front, and then I was all set. So if you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. I would love to have you. If you don't already, you can follow me over on Instagram. I'm at Traci M. Reed. I'd love to see you over there as well. There's a link to the Away We Go collection, or no, the Anywhere But Here collection in the comment section below. Away We Go can be found at your local scrapbook store, and there's a link to Colorcast in the description box below as well. I will see you next time. Thank you.